Seen it. I've seen it. Please try to explain how he does what he does.
He's incredible. He's so clutch. He has a slow heart.
Oh, back! Bregman, deep center. Touch him all time. A free run.
Hold on to your hats, Cardinals fans, because just when it felt like the offseason had gone cold and the Nolan Arenado situation was destined to linger awkwardly into another year, baseball delivered a twist so dramatic it instantly changed the conversation. For weeks, the Arenado trade market looked lifeless. Teams waited, front offices hesitated. St. Louis appeared boxed in by an aging star, a massive contract, and limited leverage. Then out of nowhere, Alex Bregman signed a massive 5-year deal with the Chicago Cubs, and in a single stroke, the entire chessboard shifted. This wasn't just another free agent signing. It was a seismic move that altered competitive balance, reshaped financial plans across the league, and, most importantly for the Cardinals, created desperation in Boston. And desperation is where real trades are born. Suddenly, what looked impossible now looks inevitable, or at least very real. The idea that Nolan Arenado could finally be moved out of St. Louis is no longer a fantasy whispered on talk radio. It's a legitimate outcome with logic, timing, and motivation lining up on both sides. The shockwaves from Bregman's decision to head to Chicago were felt immediately. The Cubs didn't just add an elite third baseman. They signaled that they are all in on winning right now, even if it costs them flexibility down the road. For Boston, though, this was a nightmare scenario. The Red Sox had structured their entire offseason around the idea that Alex Bregman would be their long-term answer at third base. They had already paid a steep price to acquire him, including parting with Rafael Devers, a move that raised eyebrows across the league, but made sense if Bregman was going to be their cornerstone for the next half-decade. Instead, Chicago swooped in with an offer Boston either couldn't match or wasn't willing to. Overnight, the Red Sox were left without their franchise third baseman, without a clear backup plan, and without much time. A front office that thought it had clarity now has urgency, and urgency leads to familiar phone calls. And that's where this story gets interesting for St. Louis. Chaim Bloom's fingerprints are all over this moment. Few executives in baseball know the Red Sox organization better, and fewer still have the credibility to negotiate aggressively with them. Bloom understands Boston's farm system, their internal evaluations, their tolerance for risk, and their pressure points. He knows when they're bluffing and when they're truly desperate. That knowledge becomes invaluable when the Red Sox suddenly find themselves scrambling to fill one of the most important positions on the field. According to Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Boston always viewed Arenado as a contingency plan if Bregman slipped away. That contingency has now become the main plan. The phone lines between Boston and St. Louis are no longer theoretical. They're active, and the tone of those conversations has changed dramatically in the last few days. Where the Cardinals once lacked leverage, they now have it. Where Boston once had options, they now have a hole. From the Red Sox perspective, the need is obvious. Third base isn't a luxury position, it's foundational. It demands defense, consistency, and leadership. Losing Bregman created a vacuum that can't be filled with a platoon or a bargain signing if Boston is serious about competing in the American League East. That division is unforgiving. The Yankees reload every year. The Orioles are young and loaded with talent. The Rays are relentless. Standing pat is not an option. Nolan Arenado, even in a diminished version of himself, fits what Boston needs far better than the alternatives. He's not the MVP caliber force he was in 2022, but he's still a premium defender and a capable offensive contributor. Over the last 2 seasons, he's posted a 105 WRC+, which isn't elite but remains solid for a third baseman who brings Gold Glove defense every night. For a team that just lost a 125 WRC+ bat at the position, Arenado represents stability, experience, and reliability. The alternatives for Boston are uninspiring or risky. They could chase Bo Bichette in free agency and attempt to convert him into a third baseman, a move that comes with defensive concerns and a massive financial commitment. They could settle for Eugenio Suarez, a respectable player but not one who shifts championship odds. Or they could trade for Arenado, a proven veteran with postseason experience, without locking themselves into a 5 or 6 year mega deal. That last option is increasingly appealing, especially when you factor in the working relationship between these two organizations. This wouldn't be the first trade of the offseason between Boston and St. Louis. It wouldn't even be the second. The Cardinals already sent Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras to Boston in separate deals, eating significant portions of both contracts to make those trades happen. St. Louis has shown a clear willingness to absorb financial pain in exchange for prospects and flexibility, signaling a full commitment to a rebuild. Those deals weren't just transactions, they were trust-building exercises. When two front offices complete multiple trades in a short span, communication becomes smoother, expectations become clearer, and future negotiations become easier. There's less posturing and more pragmatism. That dynamic matters, especially when a high-profile player like Arenado is involved. Financially, the Arenado contract has always been the sticking point. He's owed $27 million in 2026, with $5 million already covered by Colorado, leaving $22 million on the table. That's a hefty number, but it's not outrageous for a contending team, particularly one that was prepared to spend far more on Bregman, and the Cardinals have already demonstrated that they're willing to eat salary to facilitate deals. If Boston can only absorb $15 million, St. Louis could cover the rest, making Arenado an even more attractive asset. For the Cardinals, this isn't about winning the trade headline, it's about clearing the deck. Arenado's presence has become symbolic of an era that didn't pan out as planned. When he arrived from Colorado, expectations were sky high. He was supposed to be the final piece, the defensive wizard and middle-of-the-order bat that would push St. Louis back into World Series contention. There were moments when it looked like it might work, but over time, decline, injuries, and organizational missteps dulled that vision. Now the Cardinals are in a different phase. They're rebuilding, whether fans like the word or not. Trading Gray, Contreras, and potentially Arenado all to the same team would be a stunning visual representation of that shift. It would mark the definitive end of the old core and the beginning of a new timeline focused on 2027 and beyond. The return in an Arenado trade won't be massive, but it doesn't need to be. With Bloom's insight into Boston's system, the Cardinals can target specific prospects who fit their long-term needs. They're not looking for lottery tickets. They're looking for real pieces. Players who can contribute in the near future and help replenish a farm system that has thinned over the years. A package built around multiple mid to high-level prospects combined with financial relief would represent a win for St. Louis, given the circumstances. From Arenado's perspective, Boston makes sense. Fenway Park could be kind to his right-handed swing, with the Green Monster turning fly balls into extra base hits. The American League would offer new matchups and a fresh competitive environment. More importantly, he'd be joining a team that expects to contend, not rebuild. For a veteran nearing the twilight of his prime, that matters. There's also something poetic about the timing. Just days ago, the Arenado market looked dead. Teams were waiting on Bregman. The Cardinals were stuck. Then one signing flipped everything. This is why baseball's offseason remains so unpredictable. One unexpected move can create a domino effect that reshapes multiple franchises, and right now the Cardinals are positioned to benefit from the chaos. For fans in St. Louis, the emotions will be mixed. Arenado hasn't been the savior many hoped for, but he's still a future Hall of Famer and one of the greatest defensive third basemen of his generation. Watching him leave will sting, even if logic says it's time. At the same time, moving on opens opportunities. It creates space for younger players. It accelerates the rebuild. It allows the organization to fully commit to a new direction instead of straddling the line between competing and resetting. If this trade happens, it won't just be another transaction. It will be the final chapter of a story that began with so much promise and ends with pragmatic acceptance. It will symbolize the Cardinals acknowledging reality and choosing a long-term path forward, even if it means letting go of big names and big contracts. The irony is that all of this hinges on a player signing with a division rival. Alex Bregman in a Cubs uniform might haunt Cardinals fans for years on the field, but off the field, it may have delivered exactly what St. Louis needed: leverage, opportunity, and an escape hatch from a situation that once seemed impossible to resolve.